Yeah. Thanks.
Really? Okay. My name is Akihisa Hirano. As she introduced, I'm studying the master's in international law here. And Victoria?
Yeah. Thank you for having us. Thank you for this opportunity, for this amazing opportunity, actually. We are talking about the digital future for the Pacific region. As we can see, we're facing this fourth industrial revolution. So we must make an statement for another side of the world, not just uh, outside of the box, not just to see more what happened in another region. So we are talking about this today, and we hope you enjoy it.
Yes, we are doing this research on digital divide, but we are still in the middle of doing the research. So the presentation, our objective is to show our findings during the research. So first of all, digital divide in the traditional context is basically it's talking about the accessibility of the internet. But when we focus on the especially the Pacific region, there is a countries like Japan, like developed countries, but at the same time, there is a island countries like Papua New Guinea or Solomon Islands. So what happened is facing the digitalization, we can recognize that the obvious digital divide, because meanwhile developed countries like Spain or Europe, we are now talking about the AI intelligence and stuff like that. But however, this is possible only based on the 5G network, because to make the digitalization viable, we need the high-speed internet. But on the other hand, developing country in the Pacific region, they don't even have the sometimes sufficient internet. And if you look at the internet's connection on a global scale, there are still many countries they don't have the sufficient internet connection. And even like based on the fact sheet by UNESCO, there are 20 countries where the half of the population are illiterate. And of course, like the many internet activities based on writing, listening, and reading. So these people are absolutely left behind. So today, our theme is a digital divide in the fourth uh, industrial revolution really impacts on the job markets. When the job market changing, of course, the requirements of the job markets is changing. So, for example, in Japan, after the COVID, Japan issued the law of the promotion of the AI literacy education. So what happened is the Japanese government tried to introduce their AI literacy education in their mandatory educational system, which means in Japan, from 6 years old to 15 years old. So they are going to learn their AI literacy to prepare for the new markets. At the same time, 2019, Japanese government issued the AI strategy. Now, six public universities of Japan, they made the model of curriculum of AI literacy. So now in the university, students are learning already from this year, learning the AI literacy, which means basically how AI is used in the society and how to read the data and what we talked before, the bias and transparency issues in the algorithm. But interestingly, for example, in Japan, speaking of Japan, they're basically how do you say? Their strategy is future oriented, because when you're talking about education, these are basically young people. The mandatory education is a young people and the university young people. However, what we talk about now also talk about is a work transition. Basically, the based on the McKinsey report this year, it's called the future work after the COVID-19. The 25% of workforce will be in the work transition. And in this context, we are very worried about the existing workers, especially based on this report, the work transition is going to happen in the how to say on-site interactive work, basic paperwork, and the people work in the warehouse because of the artificial intelligence and the robots and everything. So these people might lose the opportunity. However, in Japan, they don't really take any initiative to take care of these problems. Now you're going to talk about the job impacts on the, yeah.
Okay, so we first want to acknowledge that the fourth industrial revolution take place with a multidisciplinary phenomenon, and it represents a variety of challenges. So, for example, in Latin America, the main challenges that face the fourth industrial revolution actually is digital divide and the lack of investment on talent. Because, as Aki said, we need to improve our labor market, and we need to improve our formal structural education. Because, for example, digital divide, we have in Latin America, we have these poor infrastructures and connectivity, so we don't have this access to the network, no, the internet. And digital divide also works as an amplifier, as an amplifier of other inequality factors that already exist in the region, such as education, poverty, and so on. So, in the lack of investment of talent, and we have the lack of competitivity, and we have as a human resources force, because if we don't invest in these future professionals that are working in this fourth industrial revolution, we may lose the chance to improve the region. So, for example, with COVID-19, in Ecuador, we have too many problems with the connectivity of internet because, for example, 70% of students have or faced problems with the virtual online classes. So, and also as workers, for example, I'm an Ecuadorian lawyer, so I used to work in a government institution, and as we had these administrative processes, we have to make a suspension of them because we didn't have the whole instruction to do this remote working on homes, you know, like we have too many problems about the whole, how the inadequate of terms also of the right labors, because we didn't have a norm, a rule that actually allows us to do this remote working, but we also didn't have this disconnection right that we are all now, we know, and we are facing. And for example, according to the OECD, in Latin America, if we can improve, if we can exceed this digital divide, we can talk about a creation of 4,000 million new jobs, and also increase in the GPD percentage of growing. So, as you can see, we have the World Bank report in 2016, and this report actually talk about the automation as an effect of the innovation and the fourth industrial revolution. But this report actually has too many issues because it was based on the performance of another study made by Freight and Osborne, and this study has too many issues because the way that it was made, it contained actually a bias, you know, like this bias that we are talking about, that Elena already talked, because we didn't know at the time that we would change all the structure of labor market, because the reality that we're facing, the new normal that we are facing. So now we know that algorithm it's not just the machine, it's the person that is behind this machine, these solutions. So, of course, we have the no literacy and education as a challenge in this digital divide, because we need to change the structure of formal education, because we need to improve so the engineers or the software developers know the deontological and the ethical rules that begins with the making of the algorithm, you know. Like, also we need to improve that, for example, future lawyers know how to actually works the AI systems. So of course we have too many challenges, and of course we have too many limitations, because we don't have of course the economic resources, and of course the human resources as well. So as you can see in this.
Yes, for example, like there is a company called Bouncel in Valencia, and it's in the legal tech industry. They are developing the application to the makes a legal labor contract by using artificial intelligence. So in this case, as she said, the lawyers also require to know the how the AI this technology help us basically automation and facilitate the process. But I think it's in the future for us to adapt ourselves to the new market, something unprecedented we're facing. I think it's really necessary to retrain the all the laborers. That's what
Yeah,
I think.
because otherwise we are facing this bottleneck, you know, like we have this problem with language, we have this problem with gender, we have this problem with the actually science, because uh, if you're a woman, if you are a lawyer, and if you are in Latin America and you have too many, as Elena said, sorry that I'm referring to her too much, but it's actually very interesting, her presentation, because it's linked to this
Yeah.
issue, as
So,
you know.
speaking of the this gender issue, the actually there is a data in 2017. There was they did a research on the 50 gigantic tech company in the United States, and what we found is that there only 20% of the employees are women. So this really is going to be the for example, of course, they are going to work in any industry, because every industry, agriculture, legal industry, any industry require this AI technology. So in this sense, if the technology industry is the male-dominated industry, of course it's going to have very impact, for example, on the outcome income in between the female and male.
Yeah. So, for example, we have the new profession that begins with this fourth industrial revolution, that data analytics, software developments, from front-end and back-end designers, but we need to prepare also these whole infrastructures as smart cities. You know, yes, you can see in this image we have the city, this Japanese city called
The Shizuoka.
Shizuoka and Fujisan, and on the other side you can see my hometown, Guayaquil, Ecuador, and the Cotopaxi volcano. And you can see from the image that, for example, Shizuoka is actually a very futuristic city. You know, like when we refer to this concept of the future, we see as Japan as the main character and main protagonist of the whole AI literacy and the whole robot advisors and the robot receptionist, and you can actually marry an AI program. But as you can see, we are not that far away, for example, Guayaquil and Shizuoka, but we have too many differences that actually can improve with public policies and public and legal frameworks. So we are continuing these researchers, and we are hoping to publish it soon, so you can we can share it with you.
Yes.
I don't know if you have some time.
Still have time? Or,
If you want to say something else, we have still 10 minutes for questions. So if you want to add something before questions.
okay, I think we can talk about the COVID things, because they're depending on the Makiza report. We already know and we already aware, we're very clear, the COVID's really paved the path to the digitalization. And based on this report, what kind of people losing a job? We are talking about the job market, how impacts the job market. And then, for example, there are the four industries. One is on-site customer interaction job, like someone like shopkeeper, stuff like that, and the leisure and travel industry, and the basic office work, and warehouse work. So what happened is, based on the report, what kind of people working in this industry? For example, in Spain, what kind of people look after older people? It's immigrants, it's a woman, and minorities, basically. For example, as far as I know, what they're doing. So these type of the people might at the risk of the losing job because of the boosting
Polarization.
digitalization. Yes.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I don't know if there are some questions. If not, I have a very basic question about, because I really love this approach, explaining how things have evolved in the Pacific region, but taking as an example two countries that from someone from Europe, as is in my case, seems to be so different as Ecuador and Japan. And it was so interesting to see that problems are not so different. So my question would be about public debate, because the problems are mostly the same, but public debate maybe changes from countries to another. And here in Spain, we have all this debate about the Charter of Digital Rights that you asked about that before. And we have these new proposals from European Union about how regulating
DSA
AI,
and
etc. So my question would be, though this public debate, which is at this moment really important here in Europe, is also important in Japan and Ecuador, or is that something that is mostly in academic fields but not a public issue? Because here,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And actually, I'm concerned about the public debate because, we have other inequality problems that take place, for example, in Ecuador, that actually, education and improve, poverty and alimentation and nutrition, because, there are so important there because, it seems so far away, so futuristic, that it doesn't seem realistic in the sense of making a concrete reality. Like, are we gonna to need this data analytic, for example, professionals? Because we need doctors, and first we need, another structures in order to improve our region. So it's actually, taking aside these digital problems, but actually it happens because the fourth and the globalization and the fourth industrial revolution take place all over the world. I mean, we don't live in an island and we don't have contact in the with the world. No, we live in a interconnectivity world. So we need to make this debate, this public debate, because we need to make a concern about this algorithm discrimination. We need to make a public debate on gender divide. We need to make a statement on digital divide also, in order to make a reality in our minds and in our public society.
I think in Japan, the public debate is mainly focusing on the future. So that's why when I'm concerned, because that's why they're focusing on educating people and the young people for the future. However, my argument is in Japan, like, there's not so many institutional support or like legal framework to help the existing the workers. So that's why I'm concerned. And also, like, if you look at the China, because I'm also doing the research of China's massive surveillance states. China is like the very different, because Communist Party, and the government decide everything, and there's no substantial debate in the public.
Many thanks. I don't know. Here we have another question, and I think that we have a question for Elena throughout the chat. So, well, so.
Later. No, later. Sorry.
Thank you both of you for your presentation. And I have this question is more based on a socio-political point of view. So please excuse me if I make it a little difficult to understand. But as you know, talking directly to Victoria, you know that in Ecuador we had a government change recently. And what should be the best way to make these type of issues, the technological issues and the lack of access that people have to internet and to the network, a new concern for a government that's new and that has to deal with the past COVID crisis and has to deal with all these other problems that underdeveloped countries have, like poverty, hunger, education. How can we make the government to be more interested into not taking all those other problems aside, but combat them together? And in Japan perspective, what do you think as well?
Okay, so I answer first. Okay. In Ecuador, we recently also approved the organic law of data protection, for example, and I think this is a huge improvement on the legal structure, the framework, because it shows that it was a debate before in 2015. But it was, taken down because of the other issues that we have in the region. And for example, in this new political context, I think we can say that the main I don't know how to say this in English because I have the thought in Spanish. Sorry. To make interesting for the government is to look forward our commercial interests. And for example, if we are doing this commercial trades with China, and we are doing this commercial trades with Europe, we need to look at our partners. No, like if they are doing this, why we wouldn't? Like if we have the chance of doing some transformation, some digital transformation, and we have the opportunity to make them, why not? So I think it would be interesting that the government actually look after these models, these strategies that their commercial traders have. Like I think that way can the political structure change too.
Okay. First of all, I want to talk about the one example, the one data, the COVID-19. Based on the McKinsey report, COVID-19 accelerated the three trends. One of the trend is hybrid remote work, and then the data show in the developed countries, 25% increased this hybrid remote work, but on the other hand, in developing countries, only 10% increased the hybrid remote work. So which means, for example, the strategy of Japan is a very important is infrastructure. So Japan already achieved, I think, 2008. Every places of Japan had the broadband network, because this is a very important infrastructure to make the for example, this online education. Online conference, for sure, it's very important to have the infrastructure. So at the end of the day, it's the budgets they have, or I think the establishment of the infrastructure of the internet is I think the first thing that every state has to do. That's what I think.
Thank you very much.